Released in 2010, this biopic, written by Aaron Sorkin and directed by David Fincher, is based on the 2009 book The Accidental Billionaires by Ben Mesrick. Chronicling the founding of one of the biggest social media platforms in the world, this film starring Jesse Eisenberg, Andrew Garfield, Justin Timberlake, and Armie Hammer would go on to be nominated for 8 Academy Awards, including Best Actor for Eisenberg, Best Picture, and Best Director. It would go on to win Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Original Score, thanks to Trent Reznor, and Best Film Editing. Today on You've Never Seen It, we're diving into The Social Network. Welcome to You've Never Seen It, an audio podcast where I am on a mission to never hear these 4 words again. I'm your host, Allison Salamone, and joining me today to chat all about The Social Network is host of the Lights on a Screen podcast, Jacob Blunden. Hi, Jacob. Did I say your last name right?
Hi. Yes, you did. Hi.
Perfect.
How you going?
It's great. This has been a day, and then I just can't even show up on time to my own podcast that I invited you on.
It's fine.
Oh man. It is it's been a day. It's been a day. But anyway, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited that you're here. And I'm excited to talk about this movie with you, but before we kind of really get into it, I wanted to get an idea from you about, first of all, just kind of your general history with movies, like what got you into them, where did you get your start, and then why this movie?
So I have always loved movies growing up. Ever since I was a kid, I would constantly harass my parents to take me to the cinemas. I loved watching movies. I broke my collarbone 4 times as a kid over the span of like 5 years because I was an idiot and reckless. And and I guess, and when you're sitting on a couch with nothing to do, mum, basically whenever it happened, mum would go, all right, we're going to Blockbuster. And I would grab 10, 15, 20 movies off the shelf, and they were what I would watch while I was sitting at home and with a broken collarbone and wasn't able to do anything. So that's really where I think it's come from. My parents have no idea. They're not movie watchers. Like my mum kind of is, but they're not really that big into movies. No one else in my family really is. It's just kind of, this has been the thing that I adore and love. And I try and see every movie that I possibly can and during the week. I'm more a proponent of theater than like going to the actual cinemas than watching them at home. Generally, I've been terrible. The last 2 years have been terrible for me because I haven't been able to go to a theater. So
Yeah.
I don't watch movies much at home.
No.
Like which is ironic because I'm, also known as the Blu-ray hog and the one who spends a fortune on 4Ks. But I love seeing a film on a giant screen in a dark room with amazing sound. And that's just how I prefer watching movies. So when all theaters were shut down and we didn't have any movies to watch in theaters, I really struggled with watching movies.
Yeah.
And I'm behind this year on a lot of stuff that was Netflix because I'm not great with just being like, okay, I have choice. I can go at any time and watch, and I can watch this at any time in the world. I'll get to it eventually. Whereas if someone tells you, hey, your screening is at 6:30 on Wednesday at this time and you have to be there, I will move heaven and earth and I will make sure that I'm there.
Yeah.
Like it's just a weird complex I have in my head about me and movies and where I go. So I have always been that's kind of my journey in film is just loved going to the theater. Absolutely loved going to the cinemas. It was my babysitter for a while when because mom used to work in one of the shopping centers, and she only did a 4-hour shift, so it was easier to, hey, when I was 11, just like, hey, here's money, go watch a movie, and then walk around and then go loiter around the shopping center for 2 hours after
It
the movie
reminds
or
me of
whatever.
like the scene. I don't know if you ever watched the show Arrested Development, but Jessica Walter's character giving like one of the the exchange student that they got just here's $5. Go see a Star Wars.
Yeah, yeah, like not to that level, but yeah, basically like that. Like it was basically like just go see a movie. That was my babysitter for the longest time. And I loved it. I absolutely adored it. I've been going to the movies by myself since I was 11, and I love it. Like there's nothing weird for me about going to see a movie by
Yeah.
yourself. It's not a. Most people go to the movies as a social gathering, and I don't. I go as
Yeah.
no. I'm going to watch this movie, and I'm seeing the movie. That is what's taking me to the cinema, not I'm seeing it with my friends.
Yeah.
I'd rather, yeah. So
It's literally it's
that's my
either I'm
relationship with
either
movies.
going to the movies with my husband or I'm going by myself. I'm the exact same way. Like if there's something that I want to see and if he either whether he does or he doesn't, most of the time he doesn't with certain things that I want to go see, but like if he does and we can't sneak up, I'm just like, "Look, I'm going to go see it. You can figure it out in your time." Like I want to see it. We're going to make it happen.
It's funny. Taylor and I we've since she's moved here, we were very much like, oh, we'll do it on our like we'll always go watch movies together, and like we would always if we would always try and sync our schedules to see movies together.
Mhm.
And this year, just because I took a second job, I am like working a lot more, and Taylor's also working a lot more. Our schedules are just so far out of line. It's the first time ever we've just been both like, hey, let's just go see it when we can see it.
Yeah.
And Taylor is kicking my ass in watching 2022 movies. She is absolutely
I'm doing the same with my
destroying me.
husband, so it's fine.
Yeah, it's quite embarrassing.
I can
how much
probably
she's kicking
quote
my ass.
word for word right now the entire Babylon trailer. That's how many times I've seen it with movies that I've gone to see recently.
So that's really my experience with movies is I care about the theater experience.
Yeah.
I care about seeing movies in a theater. I care about seeing them on as big a screen as I possibly can. And one of my memories of just as a kid is constantly going to the movies. And
Yeah.
that's what I do. It's what I love, and it's
I love
the
that.
thing that I keep annoying everyone for.
I love it though. And so kind of with that, when I was finding people to join me on this adventure of things that I haven't seen and I made my list of movies, I had reached out to Taylor and she had taken a look at it and she had signed up for Prometheus. And then she was like, if you don't have anybody for the social network, you need to message Jacob. Like he will talk to you about that till he is blue in the face. Go hit him up and see if he wants to come on for it.
So I know this is an audio podcast and no one can see this. This 4K is worth about $200.
Is it really?
Can't buy this standalone. I had to have it.
Yeah.
Look, this is my all-time favorite movie.
Okay.
And the reason why I like for the longest time it wasn't. For anyone who's followed me for the last decade, I've always said Good Will Hunting was my favorite movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still up there. Like Good Will Hunting is a amazing, wonderful movie that I adore and can watch over and over again. I absolutely love that movie. And Good Will Hunting was one that I always said was my favorite because it was the movie that I watched during a really bad period in my life and was kind of like, oh, this is what movies can do. This is what cinema can do. And it can open it up and you can tell these really dramatic stories. And like, it's why I always gravitated towards Good Will Hunting. Over the last decade, though, there's just this movie that I keep coming back to every time, no matter what. And it's this. It's this movie here, and I no matter what keep coming back to it. And the reason why I still remember seeing this in a theater, and I remember my first review of it was it's good, it's
Yeah.
not great. Like my first review wasn't particularly kind.
Yeah.
And like the reason why I think it's grown on me so much ever since I've seen it was how much I've come to appreciate cinema more, how much I've come to appreciate what it does, and the way Aaron Sorkin's script works. It was also one of those movies where it grew on me more, and I just kept going back and seeing it in the theater, despite the fact being like, I don't think I like this. Like the first time I
give it
saw
one more try.
yeah, like the first time I saw it, I remember I vividly remember loving the opening scene. I remember loving most of the movie, adoring Andrew Garfield's performance, but I hated the ending. I was like, I really hate the way this movie ends.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, it's so anticlimactic, it's so silly, like that, and I wasn't a fan of it. And then but I kept going back and I kept going back, and the more and more I've gotten from it, and the more distance I've had, the more I've fallen in love with it. And it's a movie that no matter what I can turn on and watch, I think is one of the best scores ever made. I love the score of this movie. I
Trent
think the opening
Reznor is fire with his.
this is his best score, and that's someone who says I adore the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo score. Like I think Girl with the Dragon Tattoo is an incredible score. I just really love the subtlety and the quietness of this one, and the madness lying constantly in the background that's begging to come through. But the reason this movie has stuck with me more is every time I go to watch, every time I think about, oh, what's a movie that I can put on no matter what, no matter my mood, if I'm in a happy mood, if I'm in a sad mood, if I just want a movie, I can always gravitate towards The Social Network, and it's one that I still remember seeing in a theater. I can still remember the experience of that. I can still just be in this movie the entire time it's on. It is one that I watched about 10 times before the Oscars had happened. This was a movie that I had just adored, and I constantly go back to. And I don't think it's like, I think there is elements that have maybe not aged the greatest, but I think that given, I think you need to watch this movie in the time that it was released, and have it with that mindset of, this was released before we really knew. We can get more into that in a bit. But this is, to me, a movie that just stays with me my entire life, and I can't. And it's got one of my favorite performances of all time in Andrew Garfield. I think Andrew Garfield gives an incredible performance.
Yes.
And he was robbed of the Oscar he should have won for this movie, and I will never forgive the Academy for that. The fact that he was not nominated is the biggest snub of all time for me. Like I think it is that there is nothing close that comes to it being the biggest snub of all time.
I have the Wikipedia page up, so now I got to go see who got best, who was in for because that's what things
like Bale winning that year. I can understand.
Okay.
Like that. So if he had lost to Bale, it's kind of like this year. Like Garfield in Tick Tick Boom, I think deserved it, but losing to Will Smith, okay, I can understand. I can understand it. Not even being nominated is the thing that I'm still mad about.
In my head, I saw The Town. I don't think Jeremy Renner was Oscar worthy in The Town. Personally, I mean, granted, I don't really think Jeremy Renner's that Oscar worthy in a lot of things that I see him. But that's crazy. That's crazy. But obviously, we got Jesse Eisenberg with The Social Network at least he got nominated. And Trent Reznor got the award for best score.
Yeah.
So, something was deserved.
Sorkin won his elusive Oscar for screenplay.
Yes. Speaking of Sorkin, so I didn't know, coming into this, I knew it was directed by David Fincher. I knew Jesse Eisenberg was in it. I knew the now problematic Army Hammer was in it, playing two people. Totally forgot that Andrew Garfield was in it. So that was a very pleasant surprise. But as I was watching it and then like typing up my intro for this, I went, that makes sense when I saw that it was written by Aaron Sorkin. Because like,
Yeah.
if you know what Aaron Sorkin does, but you're not, it's one of those things where I could just be like, I feel like this is, because I did, like, in my head, I was like, is this, I literally thought, I was like, this has to be an Aaron Sorkin thing, right? Like, that's the thing, because of the dialogue. That guy is so dialogue heavy with everything, but you have someone like Jesse Eisenberg who is throwing this dialogue out there. Just his I had to watch it with subtitles for a minute because of like just how soft it was, but also like just how fast he was going with it.
The opening scene, I think, is the perfect. I think the opening scene is an all-time classic. I think it's one of the greatest it's I think it's something like 4 minutes, and like I think it's like 15 pages in the screenplay, and it goes for 4 minutes, and it is one of the greatest opening scenes you can ever have in a movie because it tells you absolutely everything you need to know about Mark Zuckerberg in that moment. His brain his brain moves a mile a minute.
Mm-hmm.
He has no social skills. He doesn't understand social cues. He doesn't particularly treat women fantastic.
Nope.
And but he thinks of himself as the victim. And I love that entire sequence because you get an understanding of exactly who this character is. And you know everything about his world, what his mindset is, and it's not being presented about him. It's from her perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. I love that we never this movie is Mark Zuckerberg is the main character, but it's never told from his perspective.
Mm-hmm.
We never actually get Zuckerberg's perspective of this movie.
No.
The entire thing is told from three different perspectives about how Zuckerberg is, and I think that is an incredible way to get around this isn't real, like this isn't truth, this isn't the exact fact, this isn't what happened. Again, Sorkin is telling a story of betrayal. He's telling a story about friendship and about the destruction of friendship. In a modern day context, in a modern day, using one of the, at the time, biggest social experiments we'd ever had in history. And I think that is the fascinating part of it, is that this story could have been told using a myriad of other things, and the story itself probably would have been the same. It being about Facebook isn't what this movie's about. It's about the young coming into an established organization, or into an established area. It is about friendship. It is about betrayal. It is about how money and how money influences. I just really love the way that this movie is about Facebook, but isn't.
Yeah. No, I definitely see what you're saying. I think one of my favorite moments too in that first like 4 minutes that we were talking about is when Rooney Mara looks at him and is like, you're gonna go through life thinking girls don't like you because you're a mega nerd. No, they are not gonna like you because you're an asshole. And then he goes and he does a bunch of asshole things throughout the entire movie, right? Like he's only thinking of himself through all of it with every little step of the way. And like he's essentially using everyone around him for his gain, for something that he wants to do. And then at the very end of it, sends her a request on Facebook and sits there waiting to see if like and it's almost like, and it's one of those, and I guess I feel like Fincher did this really well with the ending of Zodiac, because there really is no ending, right? Like Facebook is still around. It's still a thing. With Zodiac, there really wasn't an ending. Like we still don't know who did it. So you have to tie it up somehow. But what he does with this ending is it leaves like a whole, did she ever, like what, like it leaves you with that whole, like, how long do you think he sat there and clicked to see if that was coming? You know what I mean? As like they play their little slides.
Yeah. So the reason, okay, I may as well start talking about this now. I didn't like the ending originally because of that reason. I thought,
Okay.
there's not an ending, and it didn't really sum it up. I now going back and watching it, I love the ending. I think the ending
Yeah.
works perfectly, and I think that the criticism of it lets Mark off the hook. I think it is a criticism that is there, and I can understand it. I don't agree with it, but we can have that discussion. The actual talking about the ending, I think, is the film is trying to basically say it meant nothing. It
Mm-hmm.
meant even after everything he did, he's destroyed all the friendships that he's had, and it was for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And even though, and that I think the line of Mark Zuckerberg as the youngest billionaire in history is meant to be, it was for nothing. It meant I
For
think
sure.
that it's the dramatic irony of he now has money, he now has success, he created the finals club that he wanted, and it meant nothing because in
All the
the
people that
end,
were there are gone.
yeah,
Like all of his everyone.
he's got hey, she got in. She he was the person that Erica came into his sight, into his world, but
Yeah.
he is still meaningless within his own sight and his own world. And I think that element of it is fascinating, and I really do love that ending and how Fincher plays that. Again, hindsight's 2020. That ending is not the ending today. I don't think you actually can make this movie today. I
No.
think this movie today has to have, especially with Facebook, especially what we know now about how Facebook's used, especially the election, 2016 and all that. I think it definitely, the movie would have to have more of a Mark is a villain
Yeah.
point of view, and I think it would have to have more of a what Facebook did to society angle, rather than Facebook's kind of a mulligan in this movie. Like Facebook's kind of the thing, but the movie doesn't really have anything to say about Facebook specifically, which I don't think it's trying to say anything
Mm-hmm.
about Facebook specifically. I think it's the thing it's saying about Facebook is, hey, this was a thing he created, and it's up to you to decide whether or not did he steal the idea or not.
Right.
That's more what it's trying to say about Facebook. It's not trying to have a point of view on, hey, is the fact that an entire generation get their news from this? Is it the
Yeah.
fact that an entire that misinformation, that Facebook are allowing misinformation, that Facebook are selling data, like all
Yeah.
that sort of stuff? It doesn't really have an opinion on, and it's not trying to have an opinion on that. And I don't think you could do that today.
No, well, especially because when you look at it, this movie came out in 2010, right?
Yeah.
Facebook itself really kind of launched in early 2000, like 2002, 2003.
Yeah.
So this movie is coming out 7 years after this thing has launched, just a few years after these lawsuits were settled.
Hmm.
So it's still kind of in, if you're thinking about it, it's still kind of in that Facebook infancy, right?
Yeah.
Facebook didn't have this prolific hold that it does now with the ideas of the misinformation and the algorithms and everything that's happened since 6 years after this movie was released, with like the 2016 election, when we really started seeing a lot of like the shit go downhill with it. So to that sense, like, you're absolutely right. If we're gonna make a movie about Facebook now, it's gonna be a completely different movie than what it is. Because one thing that I did notice, like when you see Dakota Johnson and everything, she even makes kind of a slight, there's the slight comment of like, I'm on this page, I'm on my computer all the time now.
Yeah.
And so it's planting those seeds, but really all the seeds it can plant is based off of what Facebook had done as the social media network at that time.
Well, to put it into perspective, the movie ends with there are 500 million users.
Mm-hmm.
500 million is its number. There are now 2.6 billion.
That's crazy.
Like, it's been 10 years. Like, that's really trying. That just kind of shows the difference of where Facebook was a decade and a bit ago compared to where it is now. And again, like, maybe there's an argument the movie came out too soon, but like I said, it's not trying to make an argument about Facebook itself. It's using Facebook to tell a story about friendship and betrayal.
Right.
And that's kind of now the thing about Zuckerberg and saying, because at the end letting him off the hook by you're not an asshole, you're just trying so hard to be. I understand that it lets him off the hook a little bit, but I think him refreshing at the end is also he's an asshole and it cost him everything.
Right. Now he's lonely and he's literally going back trying to see if this girl will be his friend on Facebook that he fucked over. Like, he did horrible things to her. And I think that also comes into play of, like, can you make that movie in this day and age given the Me Too movement and things like that? You know what I mean? With how, like, again, that's how it was. I get that that's how it was at the time, and it made sense to use it in that day and age. But you would think that there would be more tact, I guess, is kind of the way that I would want to put it. But I feel like in doing so, because of that, you're also still not going to get the full story of how Facebook was. And really, I don't even think if you did it in this day and age, I would want a movie about the beginning of Facebook. I would want to see what it's been doing now, what it's been doing since that point. Like, I would want to see more of like a sequel than anything else.
Yeah, and that's kind of just I think when people try and criticize this movie about, oh, look, like, it doesn't attack Facebook, I think you need to look at it in the context of it was 2010 and Facebook was a much smaller entity than it is now. Mm-hmm. And that's just kind of where I'm coming from with, in terms of the way it approaches its storytelling and how the use of Facebook is really secondary. Mm-hmm. I think Facebook is the catalyst, but it is not trying to provide commentary on Facebook.
Right. I agree. No, 100%. And I don't think that it's kind of neat, because, like, when I remember seeing the previews for this movie and I'm going, ugh, they're already making a movie about how Facebook started. Like, I remember rolling my eyes, just probably why I had no desire to really kind of go see it. It just didn't interest me at the time, because I'm just like, I don't want to know how this whole thing that I can't stand but keep going to on a daily basis began.
It was the Facebook movie. Like, that was the Facebook movie. And it's like, no, it's not the Facebook movie. It is a lot bigger than that and a lot deeper than that. And this is, again, I think that there is a lot more that this movie is trying to do and does very successfully. I think this is one of Fincher's, personally, I think it's Fincher's best film, and I think it's his best directed film.
Now, I'm trying to think how many things I've seen by David Fincher now, because I did this before with, let me just pull up the IMDb. I'll pull up David Fincher's IMDb now, because there's a lot of stuff I watch, and I'm like, oh, that was David Fincher? Mm. I will say, though, while I'm looking this up, I gotta point at the elephant in the room for me with some of his stuff. I can't stand the green and the muted tones and the dark color. Like, between him and, like, the Snyderverse, like, these dark movies with, not just pissed off all my Snyder bros that may or may not listen. I'm sorry, not sorry. But it's just, like, the muted color, and, like, it drives me nuts.
I think and I understand that, but I think for something like this, where you're very much Silicon Valley, you're very much Harvard, I think it works for this movie, and I think that there is very much, again, you're doing a film about what is essentially a mad genius, and I think you need to get into his mindset. And the way that others perceive him, I think, is also what works really well with this script.
Yeah. I can see that. I just, God, I love I just like color. I don't even want bright colors. Like, I don't need La La Land bright colors, but, like, just
look, not to go on the tangent that I go on all the time whenever I'm on a podcast lately, but, like, That's my problem with the Marvel movies right now.
Yeah.
Is they are so muted of color. There is no such thing as
the
color.
biggest
in them.
issue that I had with Eternals is I didn't hate Eternals, but it's all muted and just like I can't. So
the problem Black Panther had for me, like, well, one of the many problems Black Panther had for me was the Avatar trailer playing before that movie really hurt it, because you're like, oh, this is what an underwater world can look like, and it's really pretty and amazing. And then we go to their underwater world, and it's like, I can't see a damn thing.
Yeah, no, that is 100% fact. We've been saying that, and my husband's been saying that too, for between the Snyderverse with everything and how dark all of that's been. Like, just everyone just wants you to not be able to see how fucking Game of Thrones all did shit in their final season, or like House of the Dragon. I'm like, this would be really cool if I could see, like, I understand there was no electricity in this pretend make-believe medieval time, but like, you don't have to film by candlelight. Like, we have the technology to do this. I've actually seen a lot more David Fincher now than I've realized, because I've seen I've seen Seven.
Yep.
The Game, love The Game. That movie's great. Honestly, I enjoy Fight Club. I know people have like problems with it now.
Fight Club's a good movie. I don't get the adoration that it gets, like the like cult like following that movie has. I don't understand that. But
I think for me, it's because I read the book before I saw the movie.
Yeah,
so fair. I have like, who knows, but I get that. I did see Panic Room. I feel like I've saw Zodiac because of this podcast. Technically I watched The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo because I've been trying to record that with Russell Howe for forever. We keep like having to reschedule. So I think the only ones that I haven't seen really, when you come down, is I haven't seen The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. Or Mank. I think those are the only two that I haven't seen, because I've seen Gone Girl.
Gone Girl's my second favorite. I love Gone Girl.
That was probably one of the best. If there's one thing I have to say about him, about the two movies that I've seen by him that are book adaptation to film, which are books that I've read, both of these with Fight Club and Gone Girl are spot on. Like, they are spot on, almost like to a T adaptations.
Well, it's funny because I've read this book, the Accidental Billionaires. Like, I read this because I love this movie, and I was like, I'm gonna read the book.
Yeah.
And the book's told, like, again, the movie is told from Eduardo's perspective, but it's also told from the Winklevosses and the and
when he calls him the Winklevi, I literally I laughed out loud. I gave a good out loud. I went,
yeah,
like, what a dick.
Like, it's told from their perspective, but it more follows Mark. The book is 100% from Eduardo's perspective. Like, Eduardo is essentially the one telling the story, and it's
Well, because according to again, Wikipedia, because it's on Wikipedia, it's true. The guy who wrote it, Ben Mesrick, the guy who wrote it, he used Eduardo as a consultant for the book itself.
Yeah.
So that would make sense that you're getting literally everything Eduardo felt, saw, dealt with, because he consulted on it.
Yeah. No. The book is a very fascinating. It gives you more details. It gives you like a lot more of what we would believe to be true. But the line that I really love in this movie that is kind of the answer whenever someone says, "Oh, but it's not 100% true," I said, "Yeah, the movie knows that. It gives you the out. It gives itself the out with Rashida Jones saying 50% of I believe 50% of it's made up, and the other 50% is just pure perjury." Like, it gives itself the out of this is emotional. People get emotional, so they tell emotional stories, and may not 100% be true. Some of it is, some of it probably isn't, but truth lies in the middle, and we're telling a movie, guys.
100%. And I think it portrays perfectly that you have Mark's side, you have Eduardo's side, and the Winklevoss twins side, you have everyone else's side. You even get like the Sean Parker part of it, who also looks like a giant piece of shit. through all of this.
I think out of everyone, Parker is the one who ends up looking the worst.
He does. And I mean, granted, yeah, like I remember when Napster started and I would download a bunch of viruses on my parents' computer to download free music.
I was LimeWire.
Yeah. Were you?
Yeah.
Less viruses on LimeWire. I had a great business going though, making burned CDs for all of my 8th grade classmates. It was fantastic.
Yep.
It was great.
Yep.
$10. Great. I think we were doing like $2 a song just because I was like, you never know. But yeah, like when you go, it's so funny too, because like when Sean Parker had his whole thing, and then you had Metallica and really Lars with Metallica coming out and like speaking out against it. I kind of sat back going like, who cares? Whatever. Look at how much money he's making. But again, it's one of those things, as you're older, hindsight's 2020, right? And what Sean Parker did was a dick thing to do, because when you realize you start realizing how the music industry works. And it's like, no, like these sales, this is the only money we get. Just like the only money we get on tour is not necessarily concert tickets, but all the merchandise, which is why you're paying $40 for a fucking t-shirt.
Like, this is counter to what the movie says for me personally, but I've never like, now I believe that the record industry, Apple, used Napster as an excuse to offset the fact that Apple's probably more the one that killed Empire Records than and Tower Records and buying physical media. They killed off that far more than Napster did.
Oh, and for sure.
And we've seen that over the last 10 years when people are more than willing to pay for Spotify. They're more than willing to pay for their content, even like, and film and everything. Like, downloading is nowhere near the same level that it was a decade ago.
Right.
It's just because you've now given people more access and paying for what they believe to be reasonable prices. So yeah.
No, I agree. That is a very, very valid point. And I mean, I tell everyone the best, like, I think now with tax or whatever, the best like $12 I spend a month is my Spotify subscription, because I can listen to my podcasts. Well, I still do Apple Podcasts, but like I can, whatever, I literally just search an artist. I see what I can find. Boom, and like, even then you have, and artists are still fight against it, right? Like you still get Taylor Swift every now and then popping up with an issue with something. And for a while, it was an issue with Spotify because of the royalties that they weren't getting. And then she decided to put all of her music back on Spotify to fuck Katy Perry over when she had her album release.
There is a legitimate argument for how Spotify handle paying out royalties, and I can understand that. And I can understand that legitimate argument, but I am also at the same time of like, yeah, I get it, but I understand that the insanely rich media artists are the ones who need to talk, so that those who aren't have a voice. I understand all of that, but man, they're really bad at selling it.
So bad. But again, I think kind of going back into the social network, when you're talking about these billionaires, I mean, just look at the rest of the world. Like, you don't become a billionaire by being a good person. Is like the story that you just keep hearing. It's like with whatever Mark Zuckerberg did, like regardless of, and you're not a good person with what you're doing. And because it's all about, because in that mindset, it's all about the bottom line. Elon Musk, a terrible fucking person. Jeffrey Bezos, thank you to all my Amazon employees for getting me to space. I can never do this with. It's like, fuck you. Why did you need to go to space? Just give them all better benefits instead.
It's and I think again, there is genuine criticism about this movie that it doesn't touch upon any of that.
Yeah.
But that's not what the movie is trying to do, and like it's not trying to do any of that at all.
Right. No, I agree. With this movie, and kind of getting into some of the different scenes and stuff like that, if you had an idea of like what your top 3 moments are from it, what would it be?
number 3 is the scene that I really love, and I didn't realize how much I loved it until actually last night when I watched it again. I really, really love the nightclub scene where he's telling the Victoria's Secret story.
Uh-huh.
And the reason I love it so much is the sound design of that whole scene and the sound editing and mixing. Sound mixing is one of the things that's driving me up the wall with modern day blockbusters. We don't do it well at all.
Yeah.
It's terrible. And a lot of that has to do with a lot of theaters not being 100% calibrated to do it correctly. So a lot of it has to do with studios not being willing to pay for separate mixes so on an Atmos it's going to sound amazing, but going to a 5.1 setup or even a stereo setup, it's going to sound terrible because you're not going to get the clarity.
You can't hear anything.
See, here's the thing, but that scene, I think you can hear everything perfectly. You can hear what you need to hear, but you also get the sense that these two are screaming at each other.
Yeah.
And I love it. I think that scene is so well done and so well mixed. I think it is also the perfect example of I think it's the scene where we really see Sean's manipulation. And we see the ability of how Sean is manipulating everything and him manipulating Mark into essentially giving him free housing and getting on board Facebook. Because for all of his faults, he could see where it was going. He knew that this thing was the next big thing.
Yeah.
And he wanted to be a part of it, despite the fact that he was too late to the game. He was late. So now he's got to find another way to do it. And I think that scene where we actually see how perfect of a manipulator and why he was so good at selling things. And we actually really get to see what Sean Parker was so successful at.
Yeah.
And I love that whole sequence. That's one of my favorite scenes in the movie. It's just absolutely sensational in the way that, and look, this is the only movie that I think Timberlake's actually good in. Like I'm not a massive fan of Timberlake at all. He is incredible in this movie and fantastic and has the most punchable face that you in the world.
100%.
Yeah, it's great. I love his performance so much in this.
Yeah.
So that's definitely one of them. The scene. So I always flip flop, but I'm gonna go the opening scene. This is number 2. The opening scene is just so well written. I love that it took 99 takes. That they got to 99 takes.
Fucking Fincher and his goddamn digital, man.
They got 99 takes so that they could get it perfect and 100% right. And he was like, nope, this is how I want it. I absolutely loved it. I thought that was, I think that whole scene is so perfect. We already really jumped into it and dissected it earlier. And then the other scene, and everyone points to where he snaps at Mark. And I love when he snaps at Mark, and that is kind of incorporated into this, but the bit beforehand when we actually get and what was his share diluted down to nothing. His share, nothing. His share, nothing. Your share, 0.03%. It's the most perfect gut punch of just you dick. Like I adore that moment because it gives you the gut punch. The absolute
he's looking right at him as it's happening. And he just, because it's and again, whether that happened or it didn't happen, but watching Garfield straight face, just looking at Zuckerberg as it's happening, and Zuckerberg sitting there and kind of trying to, because he can't even look him in the eye.
Yeah.
Like that, I think
and like that's the thing. He knows he's screwed. He knows that's the end. That is the answer. And look, he's right that he made a bad Garfield Eduardo probably made the wrong choice. He legally Zuckerberg probably would have gotten away with it if it went to trial. Like if it actually went to trial, he probably would have gotten away with it.
Yeah.
But like he knows in that point he screwed over his best friend, and he knows that he has just ruined that friendship. Like that moment is the gut punch that this movie needs, and it comes at the right moment, and it is exactly where I just went, oh, I'm so mad he didn't get nominated.
Yeah. Yeah. To kind of piggyback off of that, when we talk about the snapping at at Eisenberg's character after we get that whole, nothing, zero.
Yeah.
The way that he just, because not only are you seeing him realizing his best friend just fucked him beyond recognition, he's now also trying to process why. And you're seeing the paranoia, and you're seeing was it about this? Was it about this? Was it about this? And while Mark Zuckerberg, he's trying so hard to be tough, right?
Yeah.
But you have Sean Parker be over there being like, bro, just being skeezy and slimy. So when Andrew Garfield goes to punch him in the face and he backs up, and he gets to have just that one line about like how like like
I love standing next to you. I get to look so tough. I love that line because it sums up like Coppola. This is a little off topic, but Coppola talks about, I don't know if you've seen Godfather Part 2 yet.
Yes.
Okay. There's a chair that Fredo is sitting in when Michael is basically basically disowning him and saying you are leaving the family, and the chair is like sinking back and just destroying him. And Coppola talks about how this chair came out of like this chair is so much more of a character and it's perfectly placed in the scene and everything. The chair that Zuckerberg is sitting in has that same effect. He looks so small. He looks defeated. He is trying to be like you had, you made a bad deal you're the business end of the company, and you made a bad business deal. And he's like, you don't have a leg to stand on. You know what you did. And the way that scene is shot and composed and just the way that the props are used, I love that scene so much, and how in that moment even though Eduardo is the one being emotional and the one who's very angry and blowing up and destroying things, he's the one who's got strength. He knows he has strength in the moment, and both Parker and Mark are just destroyed in that. And that whole sequence is just, you get the understanding that Eduardo knows Parker's completely manipulated him. He knows that Sean is the instigator for all of this, but now he's talking to his friend and he wants to hear it from his friend. And his friend basically goes, "Yeah, no, I agree with this, and we had to do this." Oh, well, screw you. I'm done. I'm coming back for everything, and and the fact that you have evidence that you've taken me off and everything, like this was my company just as much as yours, and I'm coming back for it all. Like I love that moment in the movie.
No, that moment. That you're right. I mean, it should have gotten him at least a fucking nomination. And I'm so mad it didn't. The other one that I honestly just love whenever anyone just loses it on Eisenberg. When he tries to go back and talk to Erica when he sees her at a restaurant, and and the way she just shuts him down, I'm like, yes, because it's exactly what he deserves. And he's like, "Can I talk to you?" She's like, "No.
Yeah.
No, you don't get to do this. Like, you said your piece. I don't care that you were drunk. It doesn't matter. I'm with my friends. If you have something to say, you can say it here. If not, deuces." And I thought that was just done the way that she just, I think it's just, again, another good portrayal of like, this is not a good guy. This is a bad person. And I love that she recurs throughout, like with each kind of act of this movie. You get her in the first act. You get her halfway through where she's not that impressed with anything that's going on.
Well,
And then you get her at the end where she's just another person on Facebook.
Well, and he mentions her again in the
Yeah.
in the Victoria's Secret scene. I love that scene more than anything because of when it comes in the movie. It comes right at the moment when Zuckerberg is at his highest. He is the biggest, like the movie's already said, he was the biggest thing on campus, despite the fact that there were two future Olympians, a movie star, like all these things. And he was the biggest thing on campus. He's just been in the bathroom with a girl. This is the highest he has been ever. And she doesn't care. She doesn't even know what he's done.
Right.
And I love that moment of just this. I don't care. Who are you? Like, I go away. You know, the angry say their snide bullshit from their rooms because you're not a human anymore. Like, I love all of that. And I think it's the best dressing down that he could have possibly gotten in that moment, because it's the catalyst again for, we have to go bigger. Again, like, I'm doing this to prove a point to her that I'm not, that I can be somebody. And I absolutely adore that moment, because you're right. Like, she is just, the dressing down she gives him and the casual way she does it.
In front of so many people, like, no fucks given, is amazing. And then, of course, obviously, that whole opening scene is just, I mean, we've talked about it over and over, but I mean, how can you not? I think it's perfect Fincher and how he directs things. I think it's perfect Sorkin and how he writes things. And I think it shows exactly why you have someone like Jesse Eisenberg playing this character.
Yeah.
Because he literally just it felt like the Jesse Eisenberg I was watching in this, he just brings that energy to almost everything that he's in, right? Like, when he was doing, granted, Batman v Superman, not that great of a flick. Jesse Eisenberg doing his Jesse Eisenberg thing, like, that's literally what I felt like I was getting.
Yeah, like, I think that, like, I think, especially at the time, given, Eisenberg was more known for stuff like Adventureland and Zombieland. Like, they were the two big movies he had beforehand. Like, he was the geeky, nerdy kid that was a little weird, that was kind of like, oh, that's Michael Cera, but not Michael Cera. Like, that was what he was known for. And then for him to come out and be like, no, this is what I can do. It's such a it's a coming out party role. Like, it's like, no, this is how good I actually am.
Yeah.
And he is incredible in this film. Like, I'm absolutely insanely talented. And I think that he really does get the quiet awkwardness while also the rage that is constantly there behind his eye of, I just need to be better. Like, he's constantly pulling to be better. It is amazing how many, like, future Oscar nominees and winners there are in this movie. Like,
right? It's crazy. I think the other Sorkin movie I covered on this podcast too, and again, like, thinking about it, I'm like, yep, very Sorkin's. I did a few episodes back, I did Moneyball.
Yep. I love that movie. Oh God, I love that movie.
So it's such good. I love a movie with, if you're gonna have heavy dialogue, it better be on point heavy dialogue.
Sorkin knows how to write dialogue. It's like it's his biggest strength. It's the thing he knows better than anyone else.
It's why The West Wing did so well for so many seasons.
Like,
because
he can do dialogue like no one else can, and he does it punchy, and he does it really just fast, kinetic. The greatest bit of trivia that I know about this movie, is the script is something like 140 pages or something.
Jesus Christ.
So typically 1 minute of screen time is 1 page. And the studio had said 2 hours. You cannot go over 2 hours. That it must be a 2-hour movie. It cannot go over. So they didn't want to delete anything from the script. So that's why everyone talks fast. That is that he was just like, just make it fast,
make it
snappy,
work. Just go.
as quick as you can, so we can get through it. The movie is exactly 2 hours.
That's crazy.
And and it works for it because they're kids. You get
Yeah.
the fast-paced nature of these children.
I think it works too in the idea of like who Mark Zuckerberg is. Like his brain is going to function differently than someone else's when you have a million things going a million miles an hour all the time and you're always on 10, right? Like or on 11. This I don't know if this will be, I gotta like think about it on like where it ranks on like my Fincher movies.
That's fair.
I think that it's definitely, I think for like my number one Fincher, honestly, I would probably go, I would probably go The Game. I just think Michael Douglas is incredible in that.
That's fair.
But I could see this like, it's probably maybe out of everything I've seen, maybe third or fourth for my Fincher movies. Zodiac is probably pretty high up there. I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about for you? Where would this go in your
this is number
Fincher?
One. It's my number one.
Which makes sense. That's why you want to talk about this and not The Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
This is my all-time. This is my favorite movie. It's the one that I will watch no matter what. Like I love this movie more than anything. This is number one on Fincher. I think it is his best directed work. I think he deserved the Oscar for this. I love, and I'm one of the few people in the world. I love King's Speech. Yeah, and I was fine with King's Speech winning Best Picture. I was fine with that. Hooper winning director over Fincher for this, it makes no sense to me whatsoever. Fincher deserved director for this movie, absolutely 100%.
I think having seen both of them, I can see that.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I'm coming at it from like I loved The King's Speech. I remember going to see it. But I love Colin Firth, and I think that he can do no wrong. Yeah. And so him winning as well, I think was
I'm so glad he did, because I think that is one of the best performances of the decade. Yeah. I think what Colin Firth does in King's Speech is incredible and electric and amazing. Like I think that is an incredible performance. So like I said, I was fine with it winning actor. I was fine with it winning picture. I was fine with it winning writing because it won adapted screenplay.
Yeah.
Original screenplay.
Yeah.
I am fine with all of that.
But Hooper getting director.
Getting director is the one that I'm like, no, that was Fincher's Oscar. That should have been Fincher's. And like, I always think that I've always gone, they waited because the next year everyone knew Girl with the Dragon Tattoo was coming, and they went, oh, we don't want to give it to him back to back. Like, I honestly think that was what was coming. It was the mindset was he'll get it for Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Well, it's like it comes back to the whole idea of like the Lord of the Rings trilogy and not giving it to Peter Jackson until the Return of the King, which personally, granted, everyone knows my feelings on Lord of the Rings. I think they're fine. I think they're beautifully scored by Howard Shore. I think that spending 13 hours to watch 3 movies, because you have to watch the extended cuts to maybe even have, to be fair, I watched them when I had COVID. Like, I had seen them when they first came out, and then I never really went back to them. So then I watched the extended because I keep seeing you shake your head. But I went back to them with the extended cut while I had COVID, and it literally took me an hour and 15 minutes of the 3-hour-long Two Towers to realize where the second tower was.
Look, I Lord of the Rings for me was always, I was a Harry Potter person growing up.
Uh-huh.
All right, it was, as someone who always loved going to see movies in a theater, I never saw Lord of the Rings in a theater as a kid. Like, I had to make a choice that summer. It was Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings. I could only see one of them. And I had read Harry Potter and I hadn't read Lord of the Rings, so I wanted to see Harry Potter. And so I didn't have this, I grew up with the movies connection to Lord of the Rings. Yeah. I watched them I watched them it was about 15 years ago that I watched them. So like I've watched them later in life, and I really enjoyed it and I loved it. And I love those movies. I think they are incredible films. And the more and more time goes on, the more and more I do just fall in love with them. I think they are sensational pieces of media. And
get everything that people love about it. Like, I understand. It's just not for me.
And
But the thing that so the reason I wanted to mention that was because I found it funny what you were saying about the extended editions. I've always been that. I've always been, oh, you got watch the extended. And then the other day, Taylor had to work, and I was stuck at my parents' place while she was working because it was just closer, and I was just there for the day. And on cable, they had the Lord of the Rings trilogy on, but it was the theatrical. It wasn't the extended. And I sat there and I watched them because I was like, oh, I'll just do this today because there's nothing else I can do. And I sat down and I watched all of them, and I just went, man, these are just as good a movies. Like I know everyone jumps up and down about the extended, and the extended are better movies, and they are, but god damn, the theatrical are just as good. Like they are incredible films. So
they're beautiful. They're beautiful. And like, I love Howard Shore's score throughout all three of them. I can't keep fucking names straight. To be fair, I also had the exact same problem with Game of Thrones, which is why like I started figuring out on the third rewatch right before season 8 happened. And then I realized halfway through season 1, I was like, why the fuck am I starting this far back? They're all dead. None of these people are around. And with that tangent, I think it's time I'm going to go into my letterbox. Because at the end of every episode, I like to go in and rank these movies out of 5 stars.
Okay.
And I think for The Social Network, I don't know if it's quite a 5-star film for me. I don't really see myself. If I would go back, to me, I think this might become more of I hate using the term because after I used it with an earlier episode, but like, I could see this being a like sit down background movie when I have a bunch of stuff to do. So because I can pop in and do all these things. But even with that said, I still sit it with like 4.5 stars. Like I'm a fan. I enjoyed it. It's definitely not the absolute worst thing I've seen on here. So, but I would sit 4.5 stars, I think.
That's good. That's fine. I'm someone, look, I'm a person who I will never give 5 stars for a first time watch. Ever.
Yeah.
I just don't do it. I can't, you want to earn 5 stars, I have to watch you at least twice. I have to sit down and actually watch you twice and love you the second time. Because the amount of films that I have watched the second time and gone, it's really only 20 minutes that I loved. It's really like, it drags a little here. Or for me, a 5-star movie is like, this is one of the greatest films ever made. Like I'm very, very picky on 5 stars.
No, I can see that. I understand. I have I definitely have more 4 to 4.5 on this show. I've done a couple 5. Like When Harry Met Sally was a 5er for me. What else did I have? I think I put Paddington 2 as a 5er because like, come on. Ben Winshaw as the voice of Paddington is just adorable.
That's one I've never seen.
Oh my goodness. We'll have you back on. I'm just kidding. That's what I'm going to do. Well,
I have a few that I've never seen.
It happens. It is what it is. But before we get out of here, Jacob, is there anything you would like to plug? Where can these wonderful listeners find you?
You guys can find me if it's still around. At Twitter, on Twitter at Jacob Blunden. Also, I host a podcast that drops every Saturday at 7 a.m. Eastern. Called The Lights on a Screen podcast, where we talk the latest new releases that just came out with my co-host Taylor Robinson and Elena. I also have a letterbox list of 1,000 movies that I'm going through that I've never seen from 1920 to 2020. So I'm going through them and slowly watching them and talking about them on our podcast as we go through them. So that's a lot of fun as well.
Awesome. Very cool. And if you all are enjoying what you're hearing, please subscribe, rate, and review to Flick and Reel on whatever audio platform you're listening to us on. If you're listening on YouTube, subscribe, like, and comment your thoughts on The Social Network, and be sure to check out and comment your thoughts on any of the other previous films we've discussed. Please don't forget to hit that bell icon to get notifications for every time we have new content drop on the channel. And you can follow the show on Twitter at NeverSeenItFNR. You can follow me at Allison Salamone. And until next time, my friends, be safe. I'm going to go keep watching some movies. See ya.